At my son's party, I heard my ex-wife declare this failure would forfeit his right to his child. Guests cheered her scheme. I smiled, gave my son his gift. 6 months later in court, when the judge saw evidence, her face turned pale. I never imagined I'd find myself here, a divorced dad who only sees his son on weekends, and even then, only if fortune allows. I'm not even sure I should be writing this, but after what unfolded in court today, I must get it off my chest. Apologies for any mistakes. I'm typing this on my phone while sitting in my car, still trying to comprehend it all. Let me begin at the start. 3 years back, my wife Christina filed for divorce without any hints or warnings. I arrived home after a grueling day at work and found her at the kitchen table with legal documents. "I can't do this anymore, Michael. We'll both be better apart." I was crushed. Our son Jason had just started first grade. We had purchased a house in a nice neighborhood with excellent schools. I believed everything was fine. It turned out I was the only one who thought that. Christina was granted primary custody of Jason, while I received weekend visitations and every alternate Wednesday. I had to sell our home to cover Christina's share, and she, along with Jason, moved into a new townhouse, while I rented an apartment nearby to stay close to him. The early months post-divorce were difficult, but we managed to establish a routine. I paid child support promptly, never missed a visit, and always returned Jason exactly on schedule. I thought we were navigating the situation as best as possible. Yet, gradually, things began to shift. Christina started finding excuses to prevent me from seeing Jason, sudden weekend plans, claims of him being ill, or important events that couldn't be missed. With each passing month, our time together diminished. Whenever I brought it up, Christina would accuse me of meddling in their lives. "Jason has commitments beyond you," she'd say. "If you truly cared for his well-being, you'd understand." I attempted to discuss a more consistent schedule, offered mediation, and even suggested altering my visitation days to suit them better, but she always found an excuse to decline. By the time Jason turned 9, our meetings dwindled to maybe 2 or 3 times a month, often just a few hours at a mall or park. He began to seem more distant during these visits, constantly glancing at the clock and asking when I would take him back to his mom. It was heartbreaking, but I persevered, trying to maintain a connection with my son, even as an unbridgeable gap grew between us. Then, last year, Christina married Greg, a successful realtor with an impeccable smile and a country club membership. Suddenly, Jason started mentioning weekends spent at the golf club, his new gaming console, and how wonderful it was to have a dad who was always there. Every word felt like a blow to my heart, yet I managed a smile and said I was happy he enjoyed time with Greg. What else could I do? 3 months ago, on Jason's 10th birthday, Christina threw a lavish party at their country club, complete with entertainers, a massive cake, and an extensive guest list. I received a last-minute invitation with the message, "It would be strange if you didn't show up," sent the day before. I had bought Jason a brand new bicycle, the exact one he had mentioned during our last meeting. I spent my entire bonus on it, wrapped it carefully, tied a bow, and even added balloons to the handlebars. I wanted the gift to be perfect. Upon arriving at the club, the party was in full swing, children dashing about, parents grouping together and chatting, and Christina in the spotlight, stunning in a new dress with flawless hair and makeup. Greg stood beside her, his hand resting possessively on her waist. Jason, surrounded by laughing friends at the clown's antics, looked a bit older than I remembered. When he saw me with the bicycle, his eyes lit up, and for a brief moment, I saw the little boy I once rocked to sleep. "Is that for me?" he asked, running over. "Happy birthday, buddy," I replied, struggling to mask my feelings. He hugged me, the first genuine hug in months, and then dashed off to show his friends the bike. Almost immediately after, Christina approached. "Honey, that's too much. Greg and I already got him a mountain bike. He just didn't want to hurt your feelings." Her tone was sweet, yet her words cut deep. I noticed Greg smirking from across the room as several nearby parents whispered among themselves. "I think a boy can never have too many bikes," one remarked. I simply responded, trying to remain composed. Whatever you say. Christina rolled her eyes. I spent the rest of the party at the margins, watching my son enjoy himself, opening gifts, blowing out candles on his cake, and laughing with friends. Perhaps his happiness was all that mattered. At the end of the party, drained and disheartened, I went searching for Jason to say goodbye. Not finding him in the main hall, I checked the corridor leading to the restrooms. Rounding the corner, I heard Christina's voice emanating from a small lounge room. The door was ajar, and I could see her with a group of women, likely other moms from the event, clutching champagne glasses and laughing. I was about to announce myself when I heard my name. Did you see Michael's face when I mentioned the extra bicycle? Christina giggled. He's always trying to win Jason's affection with grand gestures, yet he never understands what being a real parent means. The women nodded and murmured sympathetic words. I froze, unable to move, as her voice continued. This loser will soon lose all rights to his child. She sipped her champagne. My lawyer is already preparing lawsuits to terminate his parental rights. My heart skipped a beat. Termination of parental rights? For what? I'd never missed a child support payment, never been in any dangerous situation with Jason, never broken our divorce agreement. One of the women asked. On what grounds? Voicing my unspoken query. Christina leaned closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. But you know, Greg knows Judge Bergman, and let's just say we have documentation showing how Michael consistently disrupts scheduled visits, emotionally manipulates Jason, and creates an unstable environment. Another woman interjected. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. Christina cut her off. What matters is what we can convince the judge of. Besides, Jason will say whatever I asked him to. He knows who truly cares for him. The guests toasted to a new chapter, one woman proposing a life free of ex-husbands holding us back, another clinking glasses in laughter, completely oblivious to my presence by the door. I quietly retreated, feeling the room spin. Parental rights termination. My son would be taken from me on false claims, and Christina was sure of her victory. I forced myself back into the party, found Jason, and hugged him goodbye, plastering on a smile while my insides burned. Thanks for the bike, Dad, he said, and for a moment, I saw genuine warmth in his eyes. Anytime, buddy. See you next weekend, maybe. He glanced over his shoulder at Christina, who had returned to the room. I nodded, pretending it didn't shatter my heart. On the drive home from the birthday party, Christina's words echoed relentlessly. She planned to steal my son away based on lies, and she was convinced of her success. The smug tone in her voice, the casual way she spoke of ruining my bond with Jason, it ignited my anger. That night I couldn't sleep. Lying in bed I stared at the ceiling, replaying every interaction from the past year, every cancelled visit, every time she called Jason during our moments together, every instance of her restricting my access to details about his school, health, and activities. It was a slow, systematic campaign to push me out of his life, and now she was ready to deliver the final blow. The next morning, I called my attorney, Razin, an experienced family lawyer who had supported me during the divorce. He listened silently as I recounted what I'd overheard. Are you sure you heard that right? He asked once I finished. Absolutely. She's planning to manufacture evidence to strip me of my parental rights. Razin sighed. Unfortunately, this isn't as rare as you might think. But you'll need solid evidence, Michael. Your word alone won't cut it, especially if she has the judge's favor. What can we do? Document everything. I replied, every text, every phone call, every cancelled visit, and copies of all of Jason's school records, which I'm legally entitled to as his parent. No judge can deny that. I began recording every interaction with Christina, provided it was legal in our state. And then we wait. We give her enough rope to hang herself. Thus began 6 months of painstaking documentation. I maintained a calendar of every scheduled visit with Jason and noted each cancellation by Christina, along with her explanations, from claims of him being sick, to social media snapshots showing him playing soccer on the same day, or excuses of family events that turned out to be mere shopping trips with Greg. I recorded all our phone conversations. Thanks to our state's one-party consent law, I didn't have to inform her. Meanwhile, Christina grew increasingly brazen in her manipulations. "Jason doesn't want to talk to you today," she'd say, though I could hear him in the background asking, "Who's calling?" She announced changes to his school without consulting me, even though our divorce decree required joint decisions. I later learned from Christina's neighbor, a kind elderly lady who always waved when I picked up Jason, that Christina had been telling people I was dangerous and unstable. The neighbor, however, knew better. She'd seen my interactions with Jason and was ready to provide a written statement refuting those claims. The hardest part was staying composed during every encounter with Christina, never revealing that I was aware of her schemes. I remained polite, punctual, and professional, even when she provoked me in ways meant to be used against me. The worst pain came from watching Jason change. He grew more distant, less eager to spend time with me. Sometimes he'd repeat phrases that were clearly not his. "Mom says you don't care about my future like Greg does." Or, "Mom says if you truly love me, you wouldn't always be around." Each remark shattered me, yet I forced a smile and changed the subject, knowing that arguing about his mother would only widen the gap between us. During one of our rare visits, Jason casually mentioned he had been speaking with someone about his feelings regarding me and his mom, a kind lady who asked a lot of questions. That's when I realized Christina had him seeing a therapist, likely one aiding her case against me. I immediately called Razan. "We need those records," he insisted. "If she's using a therapist to manipulate Jason, we must obtain the information through proper legal channels." We discovered that Christina had indeed been taking Jason to a therapist named Dr. Mercer. However, when we requested his records, Dr. Mercer refused, citing patient confidentiality. It required a court order to gain access, and what we uncovered was deeply unsettling. The records revealed that Christina had essentially directed Dr. Mercer, instructing her to note that I was emotionally abusive even before Jason's initial session. The therapist's records were filled with suggestive questions and interpretations that seamlessly aligned with Christina's version of events. Not once did Jason explicitly express fear or dislike for me. Rather, the notes contained the therapist's clinical opinion that he exhibited anxiety linked to our visits. Meanwhile, I continued to keep precise records of every school event I wasn't informed about, every doctor's appointment I should have known about but didn't, and every extracurricular activity that I was kept in the dark about. I also logged each instance when I arrived for scheduled visits only to be told that Jason was unavailable or unwell. 38 cancelled visits in a span of 6 months, nearly every scheduled meeting I was entitled to. The most incriminating evidence, however, came from recordings of Christina plainly admitting that she was deliberately keeping Jason from me simply because she felt like it, and telling me that Jason needed to understand that Greg was now his true father figure. Through Razan, I learned that Christina and Greg had been quietly consulting with therapists until they found one willing to document exactly what they wanted. My attorney managed to track down 2 other child psychologists who had met Jason once but chose not to continue treatment. Both were ready to testify that Christina had explicitly asked them to note that Jason was traumatized by our visits, even though either observed any such behavior. Each evening, after compiling the day's records, I would revisit old photographs of Jason, his first steps, his first day at school, family camping trips, and recall the pure love and trust he once showed me. Now, during our brief visits, he could barely meet my eyes. It was soul-crushing, but I had to press on. If Christina succeeded in terminating my parental rights, I would lose Jason forever. No birthdays, no school events, no chance to watch him grow into a man. The very thought was unbearable. Months into my documentation project, Razan called with news: Christina was making her move. He explained that she had filed a petition to modify the custody agreement, seeking full custody and the termination of my parental rights on charges of persistent neglect, emotional abuse, and the creation of an unstable environment. The accusations were absurdly contrived. She claimed I consistently canceled visits, missed crucial moments in Jason's life, and exhibited dangerous outbursts of anger. The filing even included a psychological evaluation of Jason, asserting that he experienced anxiety following our visits, though I doubted any reputable psychologist had actually conducted such an assessment. "This is good," Razin said, his tone laced with surprise. "She's overreaching. These are specific claims we can refute. We've been preparing our case precisely for this moment." The hearing was set for 3 weeks later, and as Christina had anticipated, the case was assigned to Judge Bergman, a judge known for his conservative leanings in family matters and a tendency to favor mothers. But Razin wasn't worried. "The more confident she feels, the more likely she is to slip up, and we'll be ready." The formal notice arrived in a plain white envelope, a petition to modify the custody arrangement and terminate my parental rights. Seeing it in black and white made my stomach churn, and holding the actual document made it all too real. I called Razin immediately, and he asked me to bring the papers to his office the following day. Sitting at his large oak desk, we reviewed Christina's claims, which were even more outlandish than I had anticipated. According to her petition, I had consistently neglected my responsibilities by missing over 40% of my scheduled visitations in the past year, and she alleged that my explosive anger had frightened Jason, creating an emotionally volatile environment. Most ludicrous of all was her claim that Jason experienced severe anxiety before and after my visits, citing Dr. Mercer's professional assessment. The petition demanded the immediate suspension of my visitation rights pending the final hearing, a textbook case of parental alienation, as Razin noted. "She's constructed a fictional version of you, and now she wants the court to validate it. Will the judge believe it?" I couldn't hide the worry in my voice. Judge Bergman was known for favoring mothers in custody disputes, Razin admitted, but he also despised manipulation. "If we can prove Christina is lying, he'll turn on her quickly," Razin assured me as he outlined our counter-strategy. We would file our own petition to modify the custody agreement, not only to reject Christina's charges, but also to seek equal shared custody, citing her systematic attempts at alienation. Our most critical move was to request the appointment of a guardian ad litem for Jason, an independent attorney assigned by the court solely to represent his best interests. This was exactly what we needed, an impartial third party capable of seeing through Christina's manipulation. The very next day, Razin filed our counter-petition along with a motion for the immediate appointment of a guardian ad litem. To our relief, Judge Bergman granted the guardian request, despite objections from Christina's attorney, Lawrence Diaz, a veteran in family law with over 20 years of experience. Christina was furious. This wasn't part of her plan. She had expected to enter the courtroom armed with fabricated evidence, a cooperative therapist, and her influence over the judge, only to exit with full control over Jason. Now, with an independent party in the mix who would speak with Jason without her coaching, the stakes had shifted. Lawrence wasted no time. He scheduled separate meetings with me, Christina, and Jason, visited both our homes, and spoke with everyone involved in Jason's life, teachers, neighbors, and even Dr. Mercer. Meanwhile, Christina's attorney filed an emergency motion to immediately suspend my visitation rights, claiming that Jason was in emotional distress after our meetings. This forced an emergency hearing before the main custody trial. The night before this preliminary hearing, the prospect of not seeing Jason at all until the trial was unbearable, yet Razin reassured me that we were well prepared. "Christina doesn't expect this," he said. "She believes it's just a formality and that Judge Bergman will automatically side with her because she hasn't faced real opposition." The emergency hearing was tense. Christina testified first, tearfully describing how Jason became withdrawn and anxious after spending time with me, claiming he suffered from nightmares and had trouble at school following our visits. Dr. Mercer then testified, using impressive-sounding psychological terms that offered little substance, and admitted under cross-examination that she had never actually observed Jason with me. Her insights came solely from Christina. When my turn arrived, Razin methodically presented our evidence, a calendar documenting every scheduled visit, Christina's text messages with feeble excuses, and recordings of phone calls in which Christina openly admitted to sabotaging my relationship with Jason. When I took the stand, Razin guided my testimony, emphasizing my consistent efforts to be present in Jason's life despite all the obstacles Christina had created. At one point, Razin asked, "Have you ever heard Christina talk about her plans regarding your parental rights?" I answered steadily, "Yes. At Jason's 10th birthday party, I overheard her telling friends she planned to terminate my rights using fabricated evidence." Christina gasped audibly, and her attorney immediately objected, arguing that my statement was hearsay. Razin calmly responded, "We have evidence to support Mr. Henderson's claim." Judge Bergman leaned forward and inquired, "What evidence?" Razin then played the audio recording from that day, where Christina's voice declared, "This loser will soon lose all rights to his child. My lawyer is already preparing lawsuits to terminate his parental rights." The recording continued, exposing her plan to manipulate Jason through her influence on the judge and her fabrication of evidence. When it ended, the courtroom fell silent. I looked at Christina. Her face had drained of color, and her hands trembled as she clutched a water glass. Greg appeared as though he'd been struck, and Judge Bergman fixed a look on Christina that blended disappointment with anger. "Mrs. Warner, would you like to respond to this recording?" the judge asked. Christina looked utterly shocked. Her attorney scrambled to salvage the situation, arguing that the recording was illegal and irrelevant, merely casual conversation not to be taken literally. But his efforts were futile. Razin continued to present evidence of Christina's systematic behavior aimed at alienating me from Jason. Then Lawrence, the guardian ad litem, shared his report. His findings were devastating for Christina. He explained that in private, Jason had expressed a desire to spend more time with me and revealed that his plans with me were frequently cancelled at the last minute by his mother, causing him considerable frustration. Based on all the evidence, including documents provided by me, interviews with key figures, and his independent assessment, Lawrence recommended that the court deny Christina's petition to restrict my parental rights and instead modify the custody arrangement to grant me more time with Jason, possibly even shared custody. Judge Bergman listened intently, his expression growing increasingly stern as he directed his gaze toward Christina. When all the testimony was complete, he announced that he needed time to review the evidence, and retired to his chambers. 45 minutes later, he returned with a solemn expression. "I find Mrs. Warner's petition to restrict Mr. Henderson's parental rights completely unsubstantiated," he declared. "I am, however, deeply concerned by evidence of systematic parental alienation on her part. This behavior not only violates our previous custody agreement but inflicts significant emotional harm on the child. In light of this, I am not only denying Mrs. Warner's petition but also granting Mr. Henderson's counter-petition." Judge Bergman looked directly at Christina. "From this day forward, Mr. Henderson and Mrs. Warner will share joint custody of Jason with equal parenting time. Additionally, any further interference with Mr. Henderson's time with his son will be deemed contempt of court, with appropriate penalties. There will be weekly sessions with a family counselor for all parties, including Jason, for at least 6 months, and a strict visitation schedule that cannot be altered without documented consent from both sides. Finally, Mrs. Warner must provide Mr. Henderson with full access to all information regarding Jason's school, medical care, and extracurricular activities." As a final measure, the judge announced that the transcript of these proceedings would be referred to the Bar Association for review, citing serious violations by Mrs. Warner's attorney regarding fabrication of evidence and false statements. As the judge concluded, I glanced at Christina. She sat rigidly, her face a mask of shock. Greg was already on his phone, probably contacting his own lawyer, I thought as we left the courtroom. Razin shook my hand and whispered, "You did everything right, Michael. You documented every detail, remained patient, and didn't take the bait. That's why you won, not only a legal victory but a moral one." I never saw Christina leave the courthouse. I assumed she slipped out through a side door, avoiding any encounter with me. The first week under the new arrangement was difficult. Jason was caught between 2 homes, clearly affected by the long-term emotional manipulation he had endured. Our first session with the family counselor was awkward. Christina barely spoke, and Jason was unsure how to act. But slowly, very slowly, without Christina and Greg's constant negative influence, Jason began to relax around me. We rediscovered each other, days turned into weeks, and by the third month, Jason started opening up. One evening while we played video games in my new, larger apartment, now with a proper bedroom for him, he suddenly paused the game and said quietly, "Dad, I'm sorry for what, buddy?" I hesitated, then added, "I don't know. I thought you believed that you didn't care about me because Mom and Greg always said things like that." He looked down at his hands, and I could see that some of what they said had taken root, though I believed it wasn't entirely true. I pulled him close, feeling him lean in without the weariness of before. "That's okay," I assured him. "What matters is that we're here together, and I'm not going anywhere." As joint counseling continued, Christina slowly began to recognize the damage she had inflicted, not only on me, but on Jason as well. One day, during a handover, she did something unexpected. She apologized. It wasn't a complete apology, nor did it cover everything, but it was a start. "I wanted him to be just mine," she said quietly, and I convinced myself it was for his own good, though I knew deep down that wasn't entirely right. It didn't fix everything, and we were far from a perfect family. Greg gradually faded from Jason's life once the court case ended. His role as a father figure had vanished when he was no longer useful as a tool for Christina's manipulation. 6 months later, on Jason's 11th birthday, we organized a modest celebration in the local park, a simple picnic with a few friends, some outdoor games, and a cake. Christina attended alone, subdued and distant. When Jason opened his gifts, he eagerly unwrapped another bicycle. His old one had become too small. He looked at me with a sincere smile and said, "Thanks, Dad," hugging me tightly without any hesitation, without glancing back at his mother or feeling any shame about showing affection. In that moment, watching my son enjoy a simple gift and experience a birthday free from tension and manipulation, I felt that every painstaking hour of documentation, every stressful meeting, and every sleepless night had been worth it. Later, as Jason played with his friends, Christina sat beside me. We watched in comfortable silence, a scenario that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "He's happier now," she finally admitted. "When he's with you, I can see it." I nodded, unsure of what else to say. "I don't know if I'll ever completely accept it," she continued softly, "but I'm trying for his sake." We sat side by side, two flawed parents, and for a brief moment, our son's laughter made it seem as though the heavy burden of our past conflicts might finally be lifting. Now, as I type this on my phone in the car outside my home, I feel a hope I haven't experienced in a long time. Not only for improving my relationship with Jason but also for healing the deep emotional wounds we both endured. 6 months ago, when I stood in that hallway listening to my ex-wife boast about permanently taking my son away using false evidence, I thought I had lost everything. Today, I know that sometimes staying silent, gathering evidence, and believing that truth will eventually prevail can make all the difference. It didn't unfold like a perfect movie, but it was enough for my son to begin calling me Dad again, with genuine love in his voice.